World changes. We'll keep you up to date with the latest information. News Talk KVNU 102 FM 610 AM.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by U&I Furniture. Multiple fire crews responded to a fire that burned an under-construction apartment complex and several other structures in Ogden. The flames were reported at 28th Street and Grant Avenue starting in the evening hours of Monday. Ogden City Fire Chief Mike Matthew told KUTV that the fire covered 3 to 4 stories of the building and began somewhere near the front of it. Matthews said the fire spread quickly, and because of the intense heat, other structures were lost. One house to the east was engulfed in flames, and 4 houses to the west. A total of 5 businesses have been damaged around the complex. Matthews said the biggest concern was the intensity that the heat generated by the fire, which made it very difficult to search the nearby homes, most of which appear totally destroyed. Throughout the night, crews searched all nearby structures and said everyone is now accounted for. The Red Cross is on the scene assisting residents and others. KBNU News Time is 5:06. KBNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies, overnight low in the mid-50s, and then partly cloudy tomorrow. There is a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Some thunderstorms may produce heavy rainfall in the afternoon, high around 90. Partly cloudy Wednesday night, and then partly cloudy, another slight chance of an afternoon storm on Thursday around 90 degrees. It's been to 92. Right now we have 87 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by the Duct Hunter. If your clothes dryer isn't drying, check the dryer vent. Don't buy new, call the Duct Hunter. They'll come clean it out for you. 770-4813.
People love shopping at U&I Furniture. They know they're going to get a great price on a quality piece of furniture. And one section of the store is Chair Heaven, where U&I has a big selection of rocker recliners, power recliners, big chairs, chairs for the petite, swivel chairs, accent chairs, lift chairs, all kinds of chairs. U&I works hard to have the inventory you're looking for. In fact, they order new furniture on almost a daily basis to keep stocked up. So if you need a sofa love, sectional, a new dining room set, stop in and see why there really is always a better buy at U&I Furniture in downtown Logan at 28 West 1st North.
KBNU News Time is 5:07. A service offered through USU Extension is one that many people may not have heard of. It's the Agribility Program. On KBNU's For the People program on Monday, Randall Begley of Agribility of Utah said it's been around for a while.
Agribility is a program that is about 30 years old.
Wow.
And we are funded through the United States Department of Agriculture, and currently we're one of only 20 states that have the program, so we feel pretty fortunate. Utah has had the program since the mid-90s, and we've had it consecutively.
You said it's based on a grant, so every 4 years they must reapply, and they're currently in the last year of this grant, so they hope to keep it going. Agribility is part of a national program designed to help farmers, ranchers, and their family members remain in agriculture when facing limitations due to aging, disease, injury, illness, or another disability.
And we do that by helping them obtain assistive technology, and that's any type of device or tool that's going to make it easier for them to farm or ranch. It might be as simple as adding an additional tractor step so they can get up into their cab. It may be something like upgrading their tractor seat so they have one with better suspension that doesn't beat them up all day.
If you know someone who might benefit from the program, they can get more information at agribility.usu.edu. An emergency crew said no one was injured Monday after a truck slammed into a Midvale restaurant. Fox 13 reports the pickup truck and car collided at the intersection of State Street and 7800 South, sending the truck into the front of the B&D Burgers building on the corner. Officials say no one was inside the restaurant at the time of the accident, and the driver of the truck was not injured. Heavy rescue crews made sure the building was secure to enable the restaurant owners to begin repairs. KBNU News Time is 5:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Attention homeowners, you may have noticed the ground shift after your foundation has been poured, causing your house to sink or settle. Protect your investment from issues before they happen. Polylift concrete raising and piering will stabilize, lift, and eliminate further settling by using Magnum piering products to save you big money down the road. Polylift concrete raising and piering are the foundation lifting experts. Visit poly-lift.com to schedule your free assessment or call or text 435-999-9309. Polylift is locally owned and operated.
Pristine wilderness can still be found in the West, where creeks run freely and historic apple trees still bear fruit. Maple Creek Ranch features breathtaking canyon views and opportunities for real estate development. 2.5-acre lots are now available with adjacent wilderness areas that provide endless riding and recreational possibilities. So find your piece of paradise just 35 minutes from Logan at Maple Creek Ranch. Schedule your appointment online at maplecreekranch.net.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Feels like Tuesday. Tuesday has no feel.
Welcome back to KBN News for the People. Hour 2 of today's show. It is Tuesday, June 29th. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. And a lot to get to, so we're going to jump right into this. We spent some time talking about fire in Hour 1 with Cache County Fire Marshal Jason Wynn. And starting off Hour 2 with a similar topic here. This was actually a listener-suggested topic, though. A listener emailed in and said, we were, I don't remember when, but we were talking about some of the recent fires, fires that were determined to be human-caused. And a listener emailed in and said, a great question here, said, you know, how do they determine this type of thing? And how does it work here in Utah specifically? Do they have is it part of a state agency? Do they have their own inspectors? Do they hire this out? Is it just obvious? They can just walk around and look at it and say, oh, it was caused by this. It's, I learned today the answer, it's complicated. So I emailed hoping for a guest today, and schedules didn't allow for it, and in fact don't allow for it until sometime late next week. But they've promised they'll give us some time, and we'll talk about this. But here's basically what was sent along, and it gets a little complicated. But so what was sent along by the state investor, a person named Jason Curry, who's a public information officer at the Utah Division of Forestry, Public Lands, and there's a third thing there I'm forgetting in the title of that agency. And the short answer to this is yes, the state does have its own investigators, but oftentimes that's not their only job. These are people who wear multiple hats but have qualifications and skills and experience to actually serve as an investigator. But, Curry said, oftentimes, the state relies on local experts. This would be fire marshals, fire chiefs, even individual firefighters who have a lot of experience and, in many cases, even some training on determining the cause of a fire in general. The state has also, Curry said in the past, relied on insurance investigators. Insurance companies oftentimes have their own investigators for various reasons. Mainly to try and save themselves money as companies. and to avoid, to combat fraud, which still happens quite a bit when it comes to insurance claims. And so those investigators have been useful in the past as well, determining the cause of home fires in some situations. So basically, there are a lot of resources the state can lean on when it comes to determining the cause of a fire, but there are actual wildfire experts. And some of these individuals are nationally employed, meaning that they are flown all over the country in a situation where local investigators, state investigators have been stymied and just aren't sure. One example provided to me was an example of a fire not here in Utah. It was in Colorado last year. And they were pretty sure, like 90% sure, that they determined the cause of this fire. But they also knew that that determination was going to upend some lives, that some people were going to end up in court, possibly even charged with a serious crime. And so they wanted to be at least 99% sure before going public with such a thing.
Well, and you'd have to convince the DA,
sure,
wherever you are, district attorney.
So they wanted to make absolutely sure. So they actually brought in international experts in that one. These people, a gentleman from Australia, actually, who is apparently an expert in fire investigations, and he brings his own crew with him. So that happened in Colorado last year. That's rare, as I understand it. The information that was sent along to me today in response to this request, and again, this was suggested as a topic by a listener. We will, in the future, actually speak with Mr. Curry here on the show. Again, he's the Public Information Officer for the Utah Division of Forestry and Public Lands, and he's agreed, to come on and talk about this in person, but schedules in the upcoming holiday and some travel in his office there didn't allow for it this week. So I'm just passing on what they were nice enough to send on to me via email here. And so, yes, to answer the listener's first question, the state does have fire investigators. Most counties do. These are rarely people who wear only that hat. From the information sent to me, these are people who have multiple responsibilities, and one of their skills or one of their experience background sets makes them qualified and capable of determining the cause of a fire. Firefighters are also in general trained on this as well, Curry said, throughout the state, how to determine the cause of a fire, because there are reasons, he said, that a firefighter might want to be able to do that while fighting the fire. Some obvious things that I could think of, but were also included in the information sent along, being able to determine if the fire you've just walked in to fight in your gear is caused by a gas leak. That's pretty important, as opposed to maybe a fireplace that got out of hand or a Christmas tree that's caught flame due to bad wiring in the lights. Knowing that it's a gas leak fire would be life-saving. So there is some general training for all firefighters that happens throughout the state, Curry said. But again, when it comes to these actual investigations, specifically of wildfires, they lean on a lot of resources at the county level. Sometimes even city fire chiefs have this experience. And then the state does employ some individuals who wear multiple hats, one of those hats being, in the event of a wildfire, they are skilled and trained at going out and leading an investigation crew to determine the cause of a wildfire. The technical side of how this is done, what was sent along to me was basically a really interesting website, which is interfire.org/features. And there in the features section, there's actually a lengthy article with interviews of fire investigators talking about, some of the investigations they've been a part of and how the cause of a fire was determined. And it's fascinating, from chemical analysis to the use of drones to get a bird's eye view of fire burn patterns, which can sometimes be difficult to determine in a wildfire setting when it's burned, thousands of acres through a forest and left a lot of standing, scarred trees. Sometimes only an aerial view is going to allow an understanding. So they use drones often to get a feel for where the fire originated from. And then once they get that narrowed down to say a 10-foot square area or even a 100-foot square area, they're able to usually make a designation. This was interesting to me. I think this is something I'd either seen in a movie or I don't know. I'd always assumed this was just Hollywood. But looking at some photos here, and I've posted these to our Facebook page as well if you'd like to see them yourself. Wildfires that have been caused by cigarettes being tossed out of a car window. It's a photo of, and this was right here in Utah. This was a small grass fire. It only burned about 2 acres in an open field on the side of a highway in northern Utah several years ago. Firefighters from the Weber Fire District were able to get the fire out very quickly, but being on the side of the road, they obviously wanted to see what caused this. Was it a spark from a trailer chain? Something from, they've had grass fires start on the side of the highway from bad brakes. They've even had grass fires that they, at a certain point, guessed were from gravel being spun by tires, hitting other rocks. Things were dry and hot enough. It can happen. This one, though, was caused by a cigarette butt tossed from the window of a moving car. The way they determined that, though, was pretty easy. And in this photo, again, I've posted this on our Facebook page if you'd like to see it, but in this photo, this again burned 2 acres. So there's a photo of the 2 acres that burned, and it's just charred black earth. No vegetation. Fence posts are burned, everything. And it all comes down to this little triangle on the side of the road, and the cigarette butt that started this massive fire that burned very quickly. Again, they got it out very quickly, but it burned that 2 acres in less than a few minutes because of the breeze that day. So they were able to get there within, I think their response time, they said, was 4 minutes. And it had already burned the 2 acres. And by the time they contained it, I think the total on the fire was close to 4. But all of that coming, and this is considered small when it comes to a wildfire, by the way, a grass fire. But 4 acres to me isn't very small. If you got a fire that's burning that much, you're in trouble. But it all comes down to this little...
4 acres that's pretty good size.
Decent size of a chunk of land, yeah. They were able to get the fire out. Then the investigation began. Well, in fact, there's hints in the story here that they actually saw this beforehand and snapped some photos as they were getting their equipment out to fight the fire. It was that obvious. But this fire comes down to this little triangle on the side of the road. And you can, again, I've posted the photos to our Facebook page, doing my best to describe it here. This little triangle comes down to, and the cigarette butt is still sitting there. So it sparked the fire. The fire burns across 4 acres of grassland just off of a highway here in the northern Utah area. And the cigarette butt that started it, not charred, not burned, just sitting there. And it comes. It literally looks like someone has just painted a black arrow pointing at this cigarette butt. Like, hey, this is what caused the fire. It's an amazing photo, and that, though, according to Curry, is the luckiest of scenarios. Usually an investigation takes a lot longer. This is interesting, too. Chemicals, soil tests are a big part of these determinations. Because chemicals that are, well...
Like an accelerant,
Like
for
an
example.
accelerant.
Yeah.
It will burn off the surface of the soil and cause a fire, but oftentimes it will leave traces an inch or two down in the soil. Because you understand, when the fire starts, it burns away from the starting point. So the heat isn't usually actually that great at the starting point. The heat can get so intense further on down when the fire's really going that it will melt soil, turn it into rock. It can get that intense. But at the start point, the heat is usually actually pretty low. So oftentimes they're able to take a scoop of soil and do a soil test on that and discover everything from traces of lighter fluid to starting fluid has been used before. Most of the time, this is the final little bit here. Curry sent this along from the state office again. Most of the time, these investigations occur only when there is a big question as to what started a fire. These are not often done when a fire starts out in the middle of nowhere in a thunderstorm. They don't go investigate every fire. If a fire starts out in the middle of nowhere, high up in, say, those outside edges of the Uinta Range there, and a thunderstorm has just come through, they go ahead and chalk that up to lightning.
The chances are pretty good,
sure.
Especially with a dry thunderstorm like we tend to get in Utah.
Sure. However, if a wildfire starts in an area where there's a lot of ATV traffic, even car traffic, and there has not been a thunderstorm, they do investigate those because, again, there is accountability here. There's a cost to the state, oftentimes cost to the federal government in aid to the state for firefighting costs throughout each fire season. And so they do their best to determine a cause and even track down individuals. One amazing story along these lines, not amazing for the individual behind this, but an individual being careless with target shooting, basically, sparked a large fire here in Utah recently, and didn't know that or left knowing it, not wanting to get caught. They weren't sure about that. But this person was just out shooting in an unincorporated area of the county. This was in Utah County, and they left. The way they were able to determine who this was, basically, is they were able to determine roughly the time based on weather conditions, wind speeds, and amount of acreage burned before it's contained or when firefighters arrive. They're able to determine roughly a start time for a fire, which that amazed me, actually. Makes sense, but it amazed me they could do that. So they can roughly determine a start time based on wind speeds, weather conditions, all of that. They know how fire functions, how fast it will burn, available fuels and things like that. They can look at a fire and say, well, when we got it contained, it was roughly 1,000 acres. That had probably been burning for X amount of time in these weather conditions. And they can get it pretty close. And so they're able to go back and say, okay, it's obviously started here. It's a popular area for target shooting, even though that is currently banned here in Utah because it was last summer as well, and the summer before. Not until August. This year it was June, but or May in some parts of the state when target shooting out in the unincorporated areas was off limits. But they were able to boil that back basically, and then they actually interviewed residents of the houses on the lane up to this area where they believe the target shooting had happened, and they were able to get a description of a vehicle, and then they were able to interview the person who confessed that he'd been out there target shooting, even though that was currently illegal due to fire potential conditions, and he was charged. So they're pretty good at this, basically, is the point that I'm trying to make. Again, we'll speak with Curry and others from the state office next week. Schedules didn't allow it today, but I wanted to do my best to describe some of these photos that are sent along. I'll post them to our Facebook page, and some great information sent from the state office, the Division of Forestry and Public Lands, where these investigators work, describing a scenario where they lean on experts at the county level, the state level, sometimes even federal, and even a few times, not here in Utah, but recently in Colorado, international experts to determine the cause of a wildfire, especially if the fire causes evacuations and causes damage to property. There are a lot of reasons they put this much effort into the investigations. It's not just accountability. Oftentimes this is for insurance purposes and more costs to the taxpayer, etc. But they do have a pretty good track record of determining the causes of fires and even boiling it down to the individual at fault. And that is the answer. This was a listener-suggested topic. If you ever have something like this, something you're just dying to know more about, and you'd like to hear from someone here on the show as a guest, what have you, email them in, kvnuftp@gmail.com. And again, Curry couldn't this week. No one in his office could this week, actually. But they have promised later next week, that we'll actually be able to talk to them, and he'll describe some more of the technical side of wildfire investigations that happen here in Utah each year. 753-5868. We'll be back right after this.
Did you get a landscape plan and now wonder what's next? You need Canyon Landscaping. They can build any plan into a signature landscape. Since 1999, their team has viewed educating clients as a crucial part of every project. This ensures customers get the best finished landscape for their specific site. No two sites are the same, so be sure to come to the experts with expertise and knowledge of delivering on any landscape plan. Call 752-3838 or go to canyonlandscaping.com. Canyon Landscaping, look for the Leaf.
You shine a spotlight on something that's cool enough to turn your head. Here's the truck that will turn your head on the road if it hasn't already. It's the 2021 Ram 1500, and now's the time to buy. Call it the Ram Spotlight Sales Event all month at Heritage. Save up to $3,500 on 2021 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab, the Motor Trend Truck of the Year, 3 years running. No big deal, but actually it is a big deal at Heritage, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
Heritage Auto Group, Heritage, it's what drives our future.
We are there in your community. Small business owners, mechanics, police officers, homemakers. And we are there serving our nation in the Air Force Reserve. When medical emergencies arise, in cybersecurity, when natural disasters happen, we are there in space. We are Reserve Citizen Airmen, and we are there with over 180 different jobs to serve your country. Air Force Reserve.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. It's a long weekend coming up for most people. I know at least a 3-day weekend, but I do know a lot of folks who have already made their plans to head out a bit early this week. This is kind of a fun topic in general. Nothing unique about this at all, usually, but some information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Chambers of Commerce, United States Chamber of Commerce, but also several state chambers of commerce supplying some of this. And to be honest with you, you can... The methods were scientific on this survey data, but this is, in the end, a self-response scenario, which, if you're familiar with polling, that the results can be less than perfect, but it still gives you a good idea of this. This big debate going on right now, are employees more productive working from home than at the office, or vice versa? And I have my own opinions about this based entirely off of experience I've had with businesses I've worked with, or anecdotal evidence from other business owners I've spoken with. So my methods and data are far less scientific than this survey, but I've always believed that it's situational. I think there are some positions at some offices in some industries or fields of work in which a person is either going to be just as productive, if not more productive, if they aren't at the office being bothered by all the other employees. That said, there are some jobs that I think are the opposite, or some fields of work, some industries where it's the opposite. So I don't think you can say, across the board that...
it just depends on what you do.
Sure.
And I guess your own motivations, right? Your own...
Well, that's a good point, Bill, actually, because some individuals, I believe, are better at self-managing working from home than others. I lack the discipline. That's... I learned that in 2020. I don't lack the discipline as far as getting the job done, but... So without, putting my whole personal life out here on the radio, I work in many of the contracts I have are not something that has to be done that day, but rather have to be done by the end of the week or even end of the month. And it's a monthly contract, so, oftentimes they've already paid. And I'll tell you, in 2020... with a lot less in-person contact with clients, I had some pretty tense Thursdays and Fridays, where I had just Monday, I got the whole week to do it.
Yeah.
Tuesday, I got the whole week to do it. Wednesday, half the week to do it. Thursday, getting a little nervous, but I can do it tomorrow. And then Friday, what am I going to do? And then, suddenly 18-hour workday. So that's the way I lack the discipline. And you can see, and I get along fine that way. It would stress other people out. But in most jobs, that's not going to work. Most jobs, there's a reason that clock in, clock out, 8 to 5, whatever it might be thing is necessary. Obviously, production jobs, anything that requires physical work. You got to have a start time and an end time. You got to have the people there running the equipment, running the machines, whatever.
Yeah, if your job is to run a forklift, it's kind of hard to do that remotely.
Can't just show up on Friday and do all the week's forklifting in one day. Yeah, I have the luxury of being able to do that, or the opportunity to shoot myself in the foot that way, I guess some might say. But most jobs don't, and so certain, as Bill pointed out, certain individuals I think are going to do better working from home than others might. I have relatives that have worked from home for years before COVID-19 was ever even heard of, and they're disciplined. They have a start time and end time. They set alarms like adults, and their employers, the fact that they've maintained these jobs, their employees are obviously happy with their output. I would not be so great at that. I would take liberties.
And no boss looking over my shoulder.
I always joke with people, there's a reason I'm self-employed, and only part of that reason is that I enjoy it. The other part is it's my nature, my personality. But so some interesting data from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on this. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is trying desperately to answer these questions for businesses, because businesses now, post-2020, are getting a lot of pressure from employees, but also from industry groups, from chambers of commerce themselves, and even self-imposed pressure to just explore it, because who knows, maybe it's better working from home, more employees working from home. But the problem is there hasn't been a lot of research on this, and again, most of it is just like the conversation Bill and I have been having here with you, listeners out there. It's anecdotal. It's personal opinion, personal experience. There's not a lot of data on, and impossible to actually collect enough data to answer for every possible scenario. And so the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has basically sent this out saying, look, you should experiment. You should not form the opinion that your employees are going to get less done if they're working remotely. Data doesn't support that. You also should not immediately conclude that your employees will get more done working remotely. Data overall doesn't support that. It seems to be industry-specific, position-specific, and specific to the individual you're actually thinking of as a remote worker. That's impossible to quantify, to answer that question for businesses. It's impossible to say, yes, you'll get X amount of improved productivity if they're not able to sit and gossip and small talk with each other in the office for 15 minutes every hour. If they're working from home, they'll actually stay more focused and on task. Maybe. Some might not. Some jobs, it would allow for it. Other jobs, it might actually be harder to stay on task working from home. So the U.S. Chamber of Commerce basically sending this data out saying, look, pick through it, look it over, maybe you'll learn something, but in the end, here's what we found after 6 months of surveying towards the end of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021, businesses who had kept employees at home even after vaccination rates in their respective state soared and it was safe to come back to the office. They kept employees at home for this reason or that reason. What experience did they have? And it seems to be across the board a mix. Some businesses reported increased productivity from their employees when they were working remotely compared to in the office. Others, the opposite. Some had 5 who were great and 2 that they needed to have come back into the office because they just weren't the type of person that could work responsibly from home. Again, it basically says, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce statement today, a big shrug. Who knows? But they do add this message on. They say, you should experiment with this because it does open up opportunities. It does allow for, if nothing else, maybe you've got some extra office space. But also, more importantly, what they found from surveying employees, many employees, in fact, a majority of employees, actually plan to stay at their job longer and seek advancement at their job if given the option to work from home, even those who didn't take advantage of the option. That, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says, they can't explain, but it showed up again and again and again in their survey data. Offered the flexibility, offered the option. Even the employees who did not take advantage of the offer to go work from home said, self-reported more satisfaction with their job and more intent to stay in that position and even seek advancement. 753-5868. If you have any theories on why this is the result of the survey by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I'd love to hear them. We'll be back right after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:39. The news is brought to you by Cache Valley Pharmacy. Today, the Utah Department of Health reported the 110th coronavirus death of a resident living in the Bear River Health District, a Box Elder County woman between 25 and 44 years of age who was hospitalized at the time of death. She was one of 3 COVID deaths in Utah since Monday, and now 2,368 Utahns have lost their lives to the virus during the pandemic. There have been 414,565 positive coronavirus cases the last 15 months, including 361 reported today, which is 3 fewer than the current 7-day average of new cases. With 15 new positive cases since Monday, there have been 22,332 cases in northern Utah, and 22,009 of that total are classified as recovered. The Navajo Nation on Monday reported 3 new cases of COVID-19 and no additional deaths for the second consecutive day. Tribal health officials say the sprawling reservation that stretches into New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah now has seen 30,994 cases of the coronavirus since the pandemic began more than a year ago. The known death toll remains at 1,352. Health officials said last week that the first case of the Delta variant has been identified on the reservation. The variant has become prevalent in the U.S. over the past few weeks and has been detected in many states, including the 4 corner states. And in St. George, Dixie State University trustees have voted for the school to change its name to Utah Tech University. That came today after the school's previous name recommendation faced backlash and confusion. The board voted unanimously to drop the earlier recommendation of Utah Polytechnic State University after it was widely mocked online and some critics voiced confusion over the term Polytechnic. Calls to change the name gained steam after a national outcry against racial injustice sparked by the death of George Floyd. But the process has also faced backlash from those who say it's a historical local nickname separate from the history of slavery. KVNU News Time is 5:42.
This is Phil with Cache Valley Pharmacy. We love being in Cache Valley and want to thank you for your support. Cache Valley Pharmacy features the best prices in the valley. And as always, free delivery. If you're in the market for prescriptions, check first with Cache Valley Pharmacy for the absolute best prices, especially on compounds and insulin. We've been doing pharmacy better than anyone else in the valley with free delivery valley-wide for the last 19 years. Cache Valley Pharmacy, the pharmacy delivery experts. Order your prescriptions online at cachevalleypharmacy.com.
KVNU weather for tonight. Mostly clear skies, overnight low in the mid-50s, and then partly cloudy tomorrow. A slight chance of showers and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Some thunderstorms could produce heavy rainfall in the afternoon, high around 90. Slight chance of showers and storms Thursday afternoon, and the high temperature again around 90 degrees. We've been to 92. Right now it's 88 degrees at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by U&I Furniture. Chair heaven. If you need a chair, they've got it. Rockers, recliners, power recliners, big chairs, petite chairs, swivel chairs, accent chairs, lift chairs, all kinds of chairs. Always a better buy at U&I, 28 West, 1st North, downtown Logan. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Paul Daines by calling 753-HEAR or visit CacheHearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Ralphie, but this here building's made from steel.
All right, then. Here goes. Gosh, that didn't work.
A building from Northern Steel Buildings will keep out the big bad wolf, and they don't break the piggy bank. Visit northernsteelbuildings.com to see their quality work or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. An update on the survivor search at the condo tower collapse in South Florida. Also, the extreme heat in the Pacific Northwest creeps inland. Plus, is working in person essential for creativity and collaboration? Another angle to the discussion about working from home. And the best and worst times to travel on the July 4th weekend. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. One response from a listener to my question before the news here that, honestly might be the answer. Again, we've been talking about this survey report from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. U.S. Chamber trying to answer some questions for, county chambers, statewide chambers, businesses, business owners. A lot of questions from 2020 still linger in the air, and one of those relates to working from home, remote working. Is it more productive? Is it less productive? Who should you consider if you're considering maybe saving some costs? Well, that was another question. Does it save costs? That was one area where the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's survey data did get a bit conclusive. It does appear to save costs for the business, and that kind of makes sense. Fewer employees at the office, fewer costs at the office. Also, this was interesting to me. Employees would take care of certain things, could take care of certain things while they were at home, working from home, and still put in their 8 hours or still get their daily duties done without, whereas if they're coming into the office, that's going to more often result in needing to leave 2 hours early here or there. That was interesting. I never thought about this, and it makes sense. And Bill, I'm curious if you've ever done this. I know I do it when I thought about this. If I've got, it's been a long time since I worked for someone else, and I remember in those days though, if I had a shift that ended at 3, and I had to be somewhere at 3, I rarely said I need to leave 15 minutes early. Yeah. I usually said I won't be back after lunch. It rarely happened, but that's how we think. I think that's kind of how we, as human beings, are. If I had a dentist appointment in the morning, and I could have gone to work for 2 hours, gone to the dentist appointment, and then come back to work, and maybe even work through my lunch to make up the time, I didn't do that. I either took the entire day or came in after lunch.
Especially if you have fillings and stuff because your mouth is numb from all the Novocaine.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to come back, right?
Like if you have a job talking on the radio, it might be a little tough for a couple hours.
I know, a little slurred speech. It's human, and if you have the personal time or vacation time or a flexible, understanding boss, that's what people are going to do. What they found, and again, this is all self-reported, so grain of salt with this, but it's the best and most thorough surveying that's been done to date. But they did find that employees, when they're working from home, when they're working remotely, they had a tendency to actually only take the time off they literally needed. They would more often work up until the travel time for that doctor's appointment. If they had to be to a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment at 10:30, they were more likely to work up until 10. Whereas employees that come to the office, they were taking half day off for that 1 hour doctor's visit. Or dentist visit for a cleaning or a checkup, and that makes sense to me. Functionally, that's how our brains work.
Although one time, if that had been my dentist, I worked at a radio station, which was in the basement on West Center Street.
Oh yeah,
across from the Utah Theater, and upstairs, guess what? There was a dentist office. So I could have just
So it would have been different from you. If you were working from home, you would have come into the office to go to the dentist.
Yeah, come into the office, done some work in the office, and then just walked upstairs.
Make sure they don't see you. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to me. That surprised or didn't. That was the one part that didn't surprise me. But yeah, so they did find that remote work did reduce the amount of half days or 2 or 3 hours off in the afternoon here and there that a person might take for an appointment. People were more likely to go to the appointment and go back to work when they're working remotely. And that makes sense. Most jobs require you to drive somewhere and park. And psychologically, that's how our brains work. It's just like, that's so much effort. I'll just take the half day and then I don't have to go back in. And if you've got the time, yeah. So there was a reduction in half days when it comes to employees who worked remotely. They were more likely to take half an hour or an hour for an appointment and then go back to work because they were working from home or working remotely than those who were coming into the office. So that's one area where it was a bit definitive. Everything else was pretty, as we've already discussed here, specific to the job, specific to the individual. But I'd thrown this out before the break. I asked listeners if they had any theories on this. One other area that was very interesting in this U.S. Chamber survey and this was a survey of employees, employers. They ran this over the last several months through county chambers of commerce throughout the nation. And something else they found was that, and this is the question I had for listeners, if they had any theories on why this is the case, but they found that employees reported a higher level of satisfaction with their job, with their boss, with their place of employment at large, if offered the option. And that was consistent through people who didn't take advantage of the option, people who stayed at the office, people who didn't choose to work remotely. There was something about being offered the opportunity to do so by their employer that increased their satisfaction. Now, huge caveat on this as well. They don't know if that is sustained satisfaction. Many things can increase an employee's satisfaction for a brief period of time, and that might have been just when they called with the survey questions. But they did see it hold up consistently through various industries and various. It wasn't determined by a person's level of education or their position. From low-level employees, starting employees to managers and even regional managers, they found that if offered the option to work from home, even if the employee didn't take it, satisfaction went up. Employees seem to respond positively to that flexibility. If an employer is willing to put forward the expense to send the equipment home to their house, something, I don't know. One listener did chime in on that, and I think this is probably the correct answer. One listener said the lesson here for employers is probably just that, flexibility. Employees like flexibility. They like knowing that their employer is going to give them a choice in any way. That seems like it would be something that would increase satisfaction with the job. And more employers should take the time to understand this. Yeah, that's a good point, and that might be all the explanation that's needed. I don't know. Again, it's fascinating to read through. It was a self-reported survey, so take that for what it's worth. People do have a tendency to say things that make themselves look more positive or appear in a more positive light when responding to self-reporting surveys. So, and the Chamber admits this or acknowledges this, but doing their best to offer some guidance, at least for employers out there wondering if employees that maybe were working from home still should be, if they should explore more remote work for their employees, if it's an option. Is it right for every employee in every position? The answer is probably pretty clearly no, but the U.S. Chamber says it might be right for more employees in more positions than you currently realize. So they're encouraging employers to experiment, explore the option, and work closely and communicate well with employees as they do so. Check it out. I've linked to the U.S. Chamber report on this 6-month survey on remote work throughout the United States. It's on our Facebook page at facebook.com/KVNUFTP, and we'll be back right after this.
Hi everyone, Congressman Blake Moore here. Join us for a public telephone town hall event on Wednesday, June 30th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Let's talk jobs, immigration, national security, family values, my visits to Hill Air Force Base, or anything else you'd like. Please call in on Wednesday, June 30th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time at 833-305-1678. Again, that's 833-305-1678. It's an honor to serve you, and I look forward to listening to your concerns on Wednesday. Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Hi, this is Vicki Godfrey with Cache Valley Bank. We love supporting local business and are proud to support the new Center Street Market in downtown Logan every Wednesday during the summer. Starting Wednesday, May 12th, the market opens at 8 a.m. and all of the merchants will be local businesses from right here in Cache Valley. Cache Valley Bank invites everyone to the Center Street Market in downtown Logan. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
Meet me downtown. Meet me in downtown Logan.
Every Saturday morning at 9, you get information to prepare you with retirement solutions for the journey ahead. It's Smart Money Ascent with Clayton Alexander of Teton Wealth Group.
How do we solve that number one fear or that number one concern? Make sure you never run out of money.
And Teton Wealth Group's Ethan Miller.
Then, when you leave Teton, when you leave our offices, you're going to have a plan that you're both excited about.
It's where your retirement questions are answered. Smart Money Ascent, Saturday mornings at 9 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Wednesday edition, Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Everything is racist, including 25-year-old relationships. It's crazy, Buck. We're going to break it down for everybody out there.
Plus, we know that Los Angeles is reinstituting some mask mandates. Is Fauciism making a big comeback? We'll break that down for you and more today at noon Eastern for 3 hours on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, coast to coast.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
Been having a lot of fun throughout this hour of radio, so why not wrap things up on a negative note? I'm kidding. This is actually kind of important, and it does involve, unfortunately, it does involve Cache Valley in a way that I wish we weren't here. For reporting purposes, a certain journalist from a certain television news station was in Cache Valley today, and this was part of an ongoing statewide reporting effort on water levels, reservoir levels, and more. And while they happened to be in Cache Valley, they spotted some residents in Cache Valley watering in the middle of the day, and they got footage of it. So you can watch for that on the evening news tonight. Why were they in Cache Valley, though? They're actually speaking to mayors from around the state to report on a pretty bad situation. This one reporting from Hyde Park today, Fox 13's Ben Winslow, tweeting out this emergency notice to residents that the mayor has sent out and was preparing at the time when they were interviewing the mayor, and basically saying that in Hyde Park, if water usage keeps up at the rate that it currently has been, the water tanks will be empty by this weekend. That is a pretty big deal. Hyde Park's water tanks not recharging fast enough to keep up with the demand. And again, while they were there, photo tweeted out here on Ben Winslow's Twitter account, while they're there, showing several residents watering in the middle of the daytime. So again, Hyde Park mayor sending out an emergency notice to residents saying that if water usage keeps up at the rate it's been going, those water tanks are going to be dry by Saturday. And there's no plan B in that scenario.
That's frightening.
Yeah. It just, and I don't know what you do at this point. I mean, I know as a mayor, you maybe just have to plead. I don't know. But that's a frightening situation. All right. Just a couple of notes on this. Honestly, it's, I just don't know what to say to this. All right. Wrapping up here, we have a town hall coming up. So just to let people know, we do these every other month, these radio town halls with Congressman Blake Moore. We agreed to forego this month's because they have several telephone town halls planned already. August, it's a recess, so we'll get back to our every other month town hall schedule with Congressman Blake Moore in September, early September. But you have an opportunity to speak with him tomorrow night. Congressman Blake Moore hosting a telephone town hall tomorrow night at 7 p.m. All you have to do is dial 833-305-1678. That is, again, 833-305-1678. All are welcome, and that is, again,